Howdy everybody, old Gare out here at the Fishing Shack, and welcome to this week's Fishing Chums Fishing Report and Show. How y'all doing today? Hope you had a good week. Hasn't the weather been absolutely gorgeous? Going to be a little warmer this weekend. I heard around maybe 85, the mid 80s. That's not bad though. But then next week, I think starting on Monday, what is it, in the mid 60s? Woo, it's going to be cool. Good fishing weather, right? Well, we hope you had a good week, and I want to thank all the viewers last week. We had like over 22,000 viewers. Thank you, Chummers. Thank you very much. I want to take care of a little business right here before we get into the reports. The other day, a couple days ago, a good friend of mine passed away, and it was W.S. Holland. He's a white-haired gentleman next to me, and W.S. was a great friend. I worked with him, emceed some of his shows. And after his boss died, Johnny Cash, W.S. was his drummer for over 50 years. And W.S.'s first job was with Carl Perkins, recording Blue Suede Shoes. But he went to work for Johnny Cash being the drummer, and over 50 years. And after Johnny died, I tell you what, they put a little show together to tribute Johnny Cash. And I went on that tour with him and did some emceeing and kind of backup stuff. So it was a lot of fun. Going to miss W.S. Holland. My golly, what a great guy. Okay, we'll put this up. All right, let's talk a little bit about the fishing the past few days. It's been pretty doggone good. We've had some bluebird weather, and it's been a little difficult at time. But I do know the topwater fishing's been a little bit better in the Ozarks for bass. We'll be visiting about this. Out at Truman, the crappie fishing kind of slowed just a little, but it's back up on the upswing. They're catching some nice crappie at Truman. And some good fishing out at Beaver. Some stripers being caught, a little bit of topwater fishing for bass. And down below the dam, we've had good reports for trout fishing. And Table Rock, Carl and I have been out there a couple times this week. We've really been catching some nice bluegill, having a lot of bluegill fun, and smallmouth bass. A few walleye caught out at Table Rock this week as well. So we've got a lot to talk about. And once again, thanks for being here. Let's start off out at Beaver Lake. The water temperature out this morning was 78 degrees. You know, we went out the last couple of days and earlier in the week, and the water temperature would be down starting around 71 or 72, and then it gradually by noontime or after it gets up in the upper 70s. So that just shows you that water temperature is really dropping. Anyway, 78 degrees out at Beaver this morning. I want to say hey to Johnny Bates. He was out trout fishing the other day, and look what he caught. A surprise. Look at this beautiful bass. Good going, Johnny. Man, that's a nice bass trout fishing, that's for sure. And we want to take a look at Juan. Boy, he's a guide out on Beaver Lake, and they've really been catching some stripers. Look at these nice stripers they caught. But I want to show you this video also, not a video, but a shot of his graph. This is what the guides will do. They'll get out and kind of cruise those lower end points until they find just what you're viewing right here. Look at that chart full of stripers. And then once they get in, they do some live bait fishing on top of them and catch a lot of good fish. So great fishing out at Beaver at times for stripers. And we want to say hi to my old buddy Richard Lee Rusher, who's been catching some nice trout down below the dam out at Beaver. Of course, the big dam and all that water coming out the lower end of the dam, bottom end, is real cool, and the water temperatures are in the 60s there, and they have been really picking up some really nice trout this week. In fact, look at this photo. These fish that they just cleaned. Aren't they beautiful rainbow trout? Richard Lee Rusher. Great guide service out there. And speaking of the guide service, look what Lisa, our video of the week. Lisa was out fishing the other day, and boy, I love this video. Look at this young lady get excited. Isn't that great?
She can't.
Buddy.
That's bigger than you. He won't even fit in the net.
Ah, good going, Lisa. You really get your people into some good trout fishing down below the dam. Okay, let's see, what else are we going to do here? We're going to go out to Table Rock Lake. The water temperature this morning was 79 degrees. But again, in the early morning hours, it could be 70, 71, or 72 degrees and gradually climb. So that water temperature is definitely fallen. Want to take a look at a big walleye? You bet. This comes from Fish Crappie. They sent this in, and they were out the other day and picked up this beautiful, nearly a 9-pound walleye. Good going, my guy. Good going, chummers. All you guys are chummers. And I'll tell you what, Brian Lloyd was out the other day, and he caught a mess of nice bass. He was, looked like he was going some meat fishing. Look at those beautiful fish. And old Gary picked up another nice smallmouth the other day. We caught several smallmouth this week, and we'll be talking about this on our fishing report segment of Table Rock. But boy, that's a lot of fun. Caught this fish on 4-pound test. That is a lot of fun, that's for sure. And speaking of charts, I want to show you a chart that when I was catching all the smallmouth bass the other day. Look at this chart. Now this is my locator, and look at all this huge school of tiny newborn shad, new hatch shad. And that's just how big these schools can be. And once you find these schools of small shad, new hatch shad, boy, the fish are not going to be far behind. And we're catching most of our smallmouth bass in about 28 to 30 feet of water off chunk rock banks, and using some tiny swim baits, and we'll be talking about that here in a minute. And we want to go to the photo of our week. Boy, I tell you what, Mike Boyles, look at this. Hey, he caught this a couple days ago on top water. So that shows you the top water season's really going to be cranking up here. Mike's a wonderful guide. If you ever need a guide on Table Rock, get a hold of Mike. I tell you what, you have a lot of fun, I promise you, when you spend the day in the boat with Mike, and he catches a lot of fish. Good going, Mike. Photo of the week, top water out at Table Rock. Okay, let's do our Table Rock report. Early in the morning, Mike just showed you, you can catch some top water fish, and you can use some spooks, junior spooks. You can use some poppers. Yeah, just try any of your favorite baits. And you know what I like to do starting this time of the year in October? I'll reach in my vault and find an old antique lure. Look at this old Lucky 13, boy. And I try to find a lure that may be 50, 60, 70, 80 years old and go out and actually still catch fish on that bait. My golly, that's a lot of fun. So the topwater fishing can be good. Starting right now, it's been on and off the last couple of weeks, but it's going to get real good for sure. And then when that sun gets up, you may want to do, it's kind of a broken record. We talk about it every week about the same thing, but they are picking up some fish on Ned rigs, on those long gravel points, and then they're getting out anywhere from 25 to 35 feet of water. Try to find shad on these long gravel points. And if you find some shad, the fish aren't going to be too far behind. You can do some drop shotting. But as I mentioned, we have really been picking up some nice fish off the chunk rock banks. In about 25, 30, 32 feet of water. Find the shad, find those baby shad, and I promise you, you're going to catch some fish. Small swim baits have been working, and by the way, some of the shad are starting to move back in the mouth of the creeks, and this is a good place to use small swim baits as well. A few jigs are picking up fish. They're still picking up some fish on plastic worms, and they've been picking up some fish at times when there's a little bit of cloud cover and a little bit of wind. We haven't had a whole lot of that this week, but boy, that's when you want to go this weekend to get out there and try crankbaits on the bluff ends, and crankbaits, square bill crankbaits, and slow rolling spinnerbaits. In the mouth of the creeks as well, try that slow rolling spinnerbait. So Table Rock has been producing some very good bass fishing this week. We've had a ball out there, that's for sure. The smallmouth are really going right now. And a few crappie are being caught up in the river areas, up in the James River in the Cape Fear area. You want to fish around some of the standing timber and the brush piles. And I've had good reports that the dock fishing, the docks with brush, is getting better all the time as well. So the crappie fishing picking up a little bit out at Table Rock. Walleye fishing, since it's been so bright and calm bluebird days this week, I caught a nice walleye the other day, trout fishing, or excuse me, smallmouth fishing. But I tell you what, Been a little slower, I think, mainly because of the bluebird weather. Real high skies, no wind on the water, that makes it a little bit tough. But as you see in that photo there, open up the Table Rock segment, a nice 9-pounder was caught, so you never know where you might catch one. Still fishing the flats and the points and the river channel. And if you can just use your locator and find any kind of activity over maybe 60 feet of water, but around 15, 20 feet down, be a good try. Some trolling baits like flicker shads or flicker minnows. Okay, let's go out to Lake Taneycomo's. The water temperature this morning was 55 degrees, and that water's always cold coming out of the bottom of Table Rock Dam. Now I want to say at Taneycomo they haven't been running hardly, if any, water the last few days, so that makes it tough for the drift fishermen. But I do know that the fly fishermen have been having a ball with no water coming through, no turbines or water being released. They've been catching a lot of fish on fly rods. And other than that, some of the dock fishing's been pretty good. Look at this photo from Trout Hollow Lodge, our friends out there. Look at this beautiful young lady with this nice mess of trout caught off the dock at Trout Hollow Lodge. Good going. Now, if you do want to get the boat out, if they're not drifting any, I would go to the night crawler. I mentioned it here last week again. Just use just a small, like a gold crappie hook, a little split shot. You don't need much because there's no current. It's a small split shot, maybe up about 12 inches, 18 inches, and use a half a night crawler. Don't seem like they're wanting that whole night crawler. Just fish that half night crawler, and I think you're going to catch some fish. And of course, use an ultralight 2-pound test with small jigs. We always talk about this time of the year. You can catch some fish on like a cinnamon or a brown or a black jig, 32nd or 64th ounce maybe. Okay, that's out at Lake Taneycomo. Let's go out to Bull Shoals. Water temperature out there today was 81 degrees this morning. And Buddy Mills was out the other day, and look at these nice crappie that he caught. Well, I'm telling you, the crappie the last 2 or 3 weeks has really picked up out at Bull Shoals. If you can get out there and find those brush piles, 20, 25 feet of water, jigging minnows. Minnows seems to be a little bit better. Tip that jig with the minnow, vertically fish these brush piles. You can catch some fish. And our old friend Daniel Crum was out. We haven't seen him for a couple of weeks, but here he was out over the past weekend. Look at this nice mess of fish that Daniel caught. Beautiful walleye. Looks like a couple of nice crappie in there as well, Daniel. Good going, my friend. Now the bass fishing in the morning hours has been pretty good at Bull Shoals. It's getting better all the time. They've been using buzz baits out there, some spooks. They've been using some chugging baits. They've been using some pop-ars, and occasionally getting some real good action. I know around the K-Dock area, watch for white bass. We've had some reports of white bass busting in the morning and evening hours off some of the points out there. But the overall fishing at Bull Shoals is the same old story with this mild weather. Drop shot fishing is good off those long gravel points. Just look for your shad, and you find big bases of shad. You're going to catch some fish out there on drop shots. Also, I've been picking up some fish earlier in the morning after the sun just starts coming up after the topwater bite, and go to your Ned rig. And they've been picking up some fish on crankbaits on windy days. That's been kind of few and far in between. And a little spinnerbait biting. Some of these shad are starting to move back in the creek areas there. That's when you want to go to your, just get out there with some swim baits and maybe a small swim bait and catch some fish at Bull Shoals. Walleye fishing has slowed. I know Daniel had some good photos of the walleye, but it's slowed a little bit, but they're still a little finicky. But you can catch them off the points by using your electronics and off some of the flats. And we've had another good report up in the Oakland area. A few walleye are being caught. But the crappie, they're coming on stronger at Bull Shoals all the time. The submerged brush piles. We just talked about it. I had 3 or 4 good reports on crappie. Sometimes you have to work for them. You know, you're not going to catch a quick limit, but you stay with it. You can end up with a nice mess of crappie at Bull Shoals. Okay, let's go out to Stockton. The water temperature out there this morning was 78 degrees. Mike Chambers was out the other day, and he had a little bit of wind on some of the points, and just throwing a crankbait up in 4 to 6, 8 feet of water on the points. And look at this nice live well full of fish that Mike got into. Good going, Mike. Nice fish. Now the walleye slowed a little bit. They're catching some short fish out there on the points and the flats, and there hasn't been much wind, and so instead of drifting, just get yourself a nice a jig, maybe a 1/4 ounce. You may even have to go to an 1/8 ounce. Put a little color on it. Seems like chartreuse or pink's doing good. And use a 1/2 night crawler and vertically fishing. Now you're going to catch some short fish, but if you wait it out, you can catch a few keeper walleye. But you have to. This weather's been awful bluebird weather. And the crappie fishing's still been pretty good at times. They've been catching some nice crappie out there. They're suspended anywhere from about 15 to 25 feet of water around the brush and the timber. And a lot of guys have been trolling flicker shads, and the flicker shad trolling are off some of the brush piles and the standing timber. Just like the walleye, you're going to go through a lot of short fish, but you can catch some keepers out there. Some people have been vertically fishing jigs and minnows, catching a few fish as well. Bass fishing's been pretty good. At Stockton, they've been catching bass on the points and secondary points and the brush piles. They've been using some square-bill crankbaits, slow-rolling spinner baits, doing some plastic worm fishing, Texas style, and some jigs out there. And I've had reports of a little bit of a topwater bait early in the morning. You want to take the kids and the family out and do a little fun this weekend at Stockton. Get out in the late evening hours, and some white bass have been busting on the points out there, and that can be a lot of fun. Just a white jig is all you need to use right there. Or maybe a swim bait with a horse head. You know, that's another thing about this horse head I like to use. It's actually a roadrunner type bait. Put a swim bait on it, and you might be out topwater fishing. Always have one of these rigged, because sometimes they won't hit that topwater bait real good. And so if you have a bait out there popping, bass comes up and hits it a couple times, but really not taking it, grab this swim bait with a horse head, maybe a 1/4 ounce, flip it out, count it down to around 5 or 7, slow roll it in, you'll have a chance of catching that fish. So anyway, Stockton has pretty good fishing out there right now. It might be a good place to be this weekend. Again, it's going to be warm, but real cool the first of the week. Pomme de terre, I want to tip of the hat to Kevin Williams. By the way, the Pommy was 76 degrees out there on the surface this morning. Kevin Williams was out the other day, picked up some nice crappie, good going. And Danny McDaniel was out the other day. Look at his mother. Took his mother fishing, and Danny said, Mom outfished me again. Look at that nice crappie. Good going, Mom. I'm proud of you. Keep putting it on him. At Pommy, you know, the crappie's a little finicky. You have to kind of move from one brush pile to the other, fishing standing timber. But I know the boys that can stick with it can catch some nice keepers out there. So I wouldn't be afraid to try it this weekend. Bass fishing continues to be pretty doggone good out at Pomme de terre in the morning hours. A little bit of topwater bait. They're doing some crankbaiting on the point, slow rolling spinner baits, and jig fishing. And they're still, they're getting into some nice muskie out there. So Pomme de terre looks good for the upcoming weekend. What a lovely little lake. Let's go out to Truman and guide Darren Anderson. He always gets his people in the fish. I tell you what, he had Rick and Sheila out the other day. Look at these nice crappie that Rick and Sheila got into by being with a good guide, Darren Anderson. Good going. Crappie fishing has been good up the river areas. Osage, I understand, is doing real good right now. So if you're looking for a place to crappie fish, sometimes they can be real shallow, below 8 or 10 feet of water. They may be even shallower, so don't be afraid to fish, 6 and 8 feet of water, vertically fishing minnows or jigging minnows. And we've had good reports in the creek areas as well, on the flats, any isolated brush piles. Ease in there with your electric motor and drop down a jigging minnow. You'll catch some fish, and around some of the standing timber as well. Out on the lower end of the lake, the crappie are a little bit deeper, and you can get into them fishing some minnows around the brush piles. And the cat fishing slowed a little bit, but they are catching cats out there on live bait, mainly cut bait as well, cut shad. And they've been picking up still some nice hybrids and white bass down by the dam, and also in that KK Island area at Truman. Lake the Ozarks, the water temperature was 78 degrees out there this morning, and the Lake of the Ozarks has been pretty good for crappie fishing. They've been catching crappie around the shaded docks in the shade. in about 25 feet of water. And skipping jigs and getting up there and flipping jigs, counting it down, slow rolling it. They're catching fish doing this way, and they're still catching some crappie over the brush piles on the main lake, the main lake points, in about 20 feet of water, 22 feet of water, vertically fishing, jigging minnows. Bass fishing continues to be pretty good at the lake. They've been picking up some fish out there on top water baits in the early morning hours. They're using some swim baits, and they've been picking up some fish also just slow rolling crankbait sometimes on the points earlier in the morning, and a few spinnerbait fishing out there as well. Okay, Lake Norfolk, it's 79 degrees on the surface out there. The stripers are still real slow, but they have been picking up some walleye, 25 to 30 feet, 32 feet of water on night crawlers, jigging night crawlers, vertically fishing them with their trolling motor. There hasn't been much wind out there. And they've been picking up some nice white bass this week out at Norfolk. And so the bass fishing's been pretty good too in the early morning hours, top water fishing and spinnerbaits and so forth. Hey, before I leave you here, I got a shot of myself with a nice bluegill. Carl and I have been bluegill fishing the last couple of weeks. This past week we really did good. We're going to have a big bluegill feed. You know, I love to catch bluegill on a 4-pound test with just a little gold hook, a little split shot up above it with like a half a night crawler. And Carl and I have loaded the boat up with it. We're going to have a big bluegill feed, but I'm telling you, the bluegill fishing's been good in the Ozarks. We've had good reports of bluegill fishing at Beaver, also at Table Rock. It's been really outstanding. I've had good reports of bluegill fishing at Bull Shoals and even out at Stockton. So if you just want to take the kids out or mom and dad out to have fun, just get out and do some bluegill fishing. They can be anywhere on the real bright days. They may be out in 20, 25 feet of water. We've caught a lot of them at 25 feet. But on overcast days, they may move up to around 15 feet of water. But you know, when you fillet those bluegill out, you may only get just a small fillet on each side. But I'm telling you, they really eat real good. They're excellent. All right, I want to thank you very much for being with us today on the Big Little Show. And for you people watching us over on YouTube, be sure to share and like and share. And be sure, Kathy, put it up there, subscribe. We'll appreciate that. And if you have any photos, you need to go to our email. Email us at fishingchums@gmail.com. To all of our thousands of viewers over on Facebook, God bless you. Keep passing the word. We're getting new viewers all the time. This is what I want you to do. I want you to join our Fish and Chums group page on Facebook. Boy, we have a lot of fun. We get a lot of photos sent in. We talk a lot with each other. And it's just fun to be. It doesn't cost you anything. Join our page, and we'd love to have you. We have, I think, over 3,000 people already joined. And that's a good way. The best way to send me photos on Facebook would be joining our group, because it gets right to us, and we can get your photo on next week's program. And let's see, what else do I have? That's about it. The weather-wise, as I mentioned a couple times, going to be a little warmer this weekend. That's good. 85, we'll take that. Then Monday, I understand, is going to drop 20 degrees, so it's going to be cool next week. And I looked at the next 2 weeks forecast. Of course, that can change any time. We're looking at temperatures in the 60s and 70s. Fall is here, that's for sure. Well, we have some great photos coming up. Kathy and I have got some dandies, some good kid stuff, and just fun photos. So